Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to this session of moral lessons from the Quran. We shall discuss another very significant passage from the Quran. This passage is actually part of the famous sage Luqman's advice and counsel to his son. We know from Arabic literature that Luqman was a sage, he was a tribal elder as well, he was a tribal leader, and it seems that at the time of succession, when he was handing over the reins of power to his son, this was what he said, what we're just going to study. And the Arabs were well known, well versed with Luqman. He was famous amongst them. Luqman and his tribe they inhabited the land of Yemen, and they had a very significant influence on the Arabs. They very well knew him, and the Quran has actually taken up the case and said that, well, look at what your own elder or one of your own elders has said, and how close is the message of the Quran to what Luqman the sage actually said, so that there is some semblance of sanity can be worked into them. So just let me share my screen with you vis-a-vis this passage of the Quran. This is Surah Luqman, which is the 31st surah of the Quran, and I am referring to verses 12 to 15 of this surah, and you can see that the name of Luqman actually figures in these verses. So the verses are Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا لُقْمَانَ الْحِكْمَةَ أَنِ اشْكُرْ لِلَّهِ وَمَنْ يَشْكُرْ فَإِنَّمَا يَشْكُرُ لِنَفْسِهِ وَمَنْ كَفَرَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَنِيٌّ حَمِيدٌ وَإِذْ قَالَ لُقْمَانُ لِابْنِهِ وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ يا بني لا تشرك بالله إن الشرك لظلم عظيم ووصينا الإنسان بوالديه حملته أمه وهنا على وهن وفصاله في عامين أن اشكر لي ولوالديك إلي المصير وإن جاهدك على أن تشرك بما ليس لك به علم فلا تطعهما وصاحبهما في الدنيا معروفا واتبع سبيل من أناب إلي ثم إلي مرجعكم فأنبئكم بما كنتم تعملون. And we bestowed wisdom on Luqman, saying, be grateful to God, and he who remains thankful remains so for himself. And he who is ungrateful, then God is self-sufficient and has all praiseworthy attributes. And recall when Luqman, while counseling his son, said, Son, do not associate partners with God. Indeed, polytheism is a great transgression. And we counseled man regarding his parents. His mother bore him with sorrow upon sorrow, and he is weaned after 2 years. We counseled him, show gratitude to me and to your parents, and towards me is the return. If they force you to associate anything with me about which you have no proof, do not listen to them, and be kind to them in this world, and follow the way of those who turn to me. Then to me shall you return, and I will inform you of what you have been doing. So you can clearly see, my dear participants, that how close this message which Luqman is giving to his son, how closely it resembles the message of the Quran, especially when it is said that do not indulge in polytheism. Remember, the Arabs who are being addressed here, this, of course, is a Meccan surah, and the idolaters of Arabia are under discussion. And they were the ones who had placed 365 idols within the Kaaba. Polytheism had been adopted by them as their own religion. And now they are being reminded through Luqman. And look what he said to his son when he was handing over the reins of power to his son. He said, La tushrik billah, do not associate any partners with God. Inna shirka la zulmun azim, because shirk or polytheism is a great transgression. So being reminded through a very famous elder in their own history is like telling them that how important this message is and how blatantly they are violating it and not realizing that what the Quran has brought to them is so similar to what their own tribal elder had once said. And actually the words start off even before that. So even before the mention of polytheism, the words which are used are Anishkur lillah, wa man yashkur fa innama yashkuru li nafsi. وَمَنْ كَفَرَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَنِيٌّ حَمِيدٌ. So it is said that the Almighty granted Luqman wisdom, sagacity. And the result of that wisdom was that the first thing that he counseled his son was Anishkur Lillah, thank God. This is something which is of immense importance. And then it says that God does not need your gratitude. إِنَّمَا يَشْكُرُ لِنَفْسِهِ وَمَنْ يَشْكُرْ فَإِنَّمَا يَشْكُرُ لِنَفْسِهِ. That he who gives this thanksgiving, that thanksgiving is going to benefit that person. God does not need our thanksgiving, because when we are thanking God, what we are doing is we are merely acknowledging, or we are acknowledging the favors that He has given to us. So this acknowledgement is due on us. He does not need our acknowledgement. It is an expression of the truth. And if we do not do that, then the Quran says that God does not need our gratitude. He is in no need for that. It is in fact we who need this gratitude. And needless to say, my dear participants, that the reason to thank God, it is immense. I mean, you just start making a list of things which can make us thankful to God. And these things will easily outnumber any of the shortcomings we might have. Just look at our own body, our own physique. Look how we have been blessed with a heart that pumps ceaselessly. It goes on and on. The blood flows in our veins and in our arteries on and on. We breathe without even thinking. We blink our eyes without, it's like an involuntary process. Just think if this had to become a voluntary process. Our eyes, our ears, all our faculties, our faculty of intellect, which is one of the greatest blessings which we have and which makes us distinct from animals. And then not just our own physique, just look at the people around us, our extended family, the way they shape our lives. And then the elements of nature, the way they nurture us, they nourish us, the sun, the moon, the stars, the rain, the wind, the mountains, all these things, they are in service for humankind. And it looks as if the Almighty has created this world in such a profound way that every single element of nature is actually put into our service. The sun does not shine for itself, it shines for us. The wind gives that breeze not to itself but to us. The trees give that shade. It is no utility to them. The shade is for us. It tells us that actually every single element of nature, every single creation of God, inanimate creation of God, is serving mankind. So you see, there's so much to think and so much to thank God for. And the first thing which Luqman, the very first thing, is that you acknowledge that someone is doing something for you. Anishkur lillah. Thank God for that. And that if you do not do that, then remember, this is your own loss. For God doesn't need our gratitude. If we are not expressive of this gratitude, then this is our own loss. And then he says, Ya bunayya la tushrik billah, and inna shirka la zulmun azim, that do not associate partners with God, because this is a tremendous transgression. You have no reason to associate partners with God. Why? Because had God needed any partners, He would have told us for Himself. Because being a person who needs partners, or if He had elicited partners, He would have been the person to inform us. In the absence of any such information, when we are associating with God, it is like actually ascribing falsehood to Him. And this is something which is unforgivable. And that is why the Quran says, Inna shirka la zulmun azim. It's a huge transgression. It's a great transgression. And elsewhere, we have been told by the Almighty that if a person deliberately does polytheism, indulges in polytheism, then that cannot be forgiven at all, because this is like knowingly and deliberately ascribing something which does not exist. It's a blatant violation of the truth. And the next thing which which Luqman told his son, again, is something very telling. It says that not only should you thank God, which is of course the very first expression that we should give, but it says that we have to thank our parents as well. And for this, actually, there is a small premise which has been first of all stated, and referring to the mother, it says that hamalathu ummuhu wahnan ala wahnin, which means that his mother bore him with sorrow upon sorrow, referring to the pain that a mother undergoes in her pregnancy. Of course, at times it's not very comfortable. And then finally, the delivery, which is the most uncomfortable process that a woman can go through. So she bore for the product for the ongoing process of adding towards mankind, that this whole pain that she bore actually is something that should elicit our own gratitude. So not only should we thank God, the verse says that we have to thank our parents as well, because they are the ones who have brought us into being. They are the ones who need to be thanked, and the way they have brought us up. This is a reference, just a brief reference, of course, to the fact that what a mother does for the child. But needless to say, at other instances, and here as well, both the mother and the father are referred. That is why the word is walidai, which refers to both parents. So not only the mother, the father also needs to be equally thanked. The services and the selfless nature in which both the mother and father serve their children should make them realize that they have been taken care of, on the one hand by the Almighty, and on the other hand by their parents, in such an affectionate manner, in such a caring manner, in such a selfless manner, that if we can only be ingrates, only then we cannot realize this. Otherwise, our eyes, our faculties can clearly see at every instance, at every step of our life, how important the role of God and the parents that He has given us, they play for our betterment and for our development. So this is how Luqman has shaped up his advice and counsel, so that we are able to realize these basic facts. And look what he says after that. He says, وَإِن جَاهَدَكَ عَلَىٰ أَن تُشْرِكَ بِي مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا وَصَاحِبْهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا. If they force you to associate anything with me about which you have no proof, do not listen to them, and be kind to them in this world. So you see how magnanimous the Almighty is. He says that if your parents force you to do polytheism, if they force you to indulge in any polytheistic practice, do not listen to them, because of course they would be doing something which is beyond their authority. Then look what the Almighty says, that even then, if they force you to ascribe partners to me, you should not listen to them. But at the same time, don't be rude to them. Don't disrespect them. Don't talk back to them, even if they force you to do polytheism or to commit polytheism. Sahibhuma fid dunya ma'rufa. In spite of this wrong attitude that they might have adopted, your own attitude should never be below dignity. You must respect them. Sahibhuma fid dunya ma'rufa would mean that you should bear with them with an immense respect. You should give them all the respect that they deserve, and you should behave with them in a very kind way. Not just respectful way, but a very kind way. This shows the importance, and this shows the stature of parents, that even if they are indulging in polytheism, which is an unforgivable sin before God, even then we cannot disrespect our parents. I think there cannot be anything which can be imagined beyond that. And it goes volumes to speak that how magnanimous the Almighty is in this manner, that He is of course so averse to the fact that people should associate with Him. But at the same time, even those people who associate partners with Him, regarding them, He tells us that we should not be disrespectful to them. In fact, we have to be kind with them. We have to treat them as worthy human beings. I think this is a lesson that we all need to understand and we all need to know. And it is a lesson which tells us that difference of opinion or our parents forcing something which would be as heinous as polytheism should not make us lose their respect in our eyes. We have to be very polite to them. We have to be very kind to them, because we just cannot forget what they did to us. As far as their beliefs are concerned, this is between them and God. God will tackle them. God will take care of them. He will deal with them. But we are no one to indulge in any sort of rude or impertinent remarks regarding them. I think this is something that we need, all of us need to understand how important this passage is vis-a-vis our own upbringing with regard to our parents. And look what the verse says right after that. It says, وَاتَّبِعْ سَبِيلَ مَنْ أَنَابَ إِلَيَّ, and follow the way of those who turn to me. That instead of condemning your parents, or instead of telling them off, instead of taking them off, don't just do that. Don't even think of doing that. All that you can do is be kind to them and just follow people who, not unlike your parents, do not ascribe partners to God, who are monotheists. So it's a very simple advice, that if your parents force you to do something which is against your own basic faith, and the biggest thing that they can force you to is polytheism, you should not listen to them. But this does not mean that you should not treat them with kindness. No, you treat them with kindness, and at the same time follow the path of those, وَاتَّبِعْ سَبِيلَ مَنْ أَنَابَ إِلَيَّ, follow the path of those who turn to me, who turn to God. You don't need to follow your parents in this regard. And this, I think, is one of the most outstanding passages or verses in the Quran which tell us the importance of parents and how they have to be treated. That even it's in such extreme difference of opinion, this cannot make us in any way rude or disrespectful towards them. And then this passage ends on an equally important note. It says, إِلَيَّ ثُمَّ إِلَيَّ مَرْجِعُكُمْ فَأُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِمَا كُنْتُمْ تَعْمَلُونَ. Then to me shall you return, and I will inform you what you have been doing. So if your parents are doing something wrong, it is between them and their God. You don't need to indulge in any sort of disrespect to them. God says, when people would return to me, I will take care of them. I will inform them of what they are being doing. You do your own job, let me do mine. And unfortunately today, what we are indulging in is that we try to assume the role of God and assume what God himself has actually left for his own self. The responsibility that he has taken upon his own self is that he says that let me deal with these people who are deviating from the truth. You do your job of respecting them. I'll let them know when they come to me what wrong they are doing, and then they will obviously suffer the consequences as well. But this is not your job to be disrespectful to them. So you see, the Arab mindset in those times, in particular, the tribal mindset, it has been called to account, and people are told fairly and squarely that don't forget that the person that you revere a lot, the person who in your history, in Arab, if you study classical Arabic literature, like poets like Tarfa and Salama, all these, you will find them mentioning Luqman and the way he went about in his life. So this was nothing new to them. So Luqman was mentioned as a person who was well known to them, and it was through him that the Almighty wanted to tell them the importance of gratitude, the importance of respecting parents, and the importance of the fact that as far as life is concerned, your responsibilities and my responsibilities, they should not be interfered with. There are obligations which God has to fulfill, and let him take care of them. And there are certain obligations which we as human beings have to fulfill, and let us think about them and not cross our limits. So I would end my talk here, and now I'm available for any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. Before I take the questions from here, I have a little written question. How okay it is, in your opinion, if women take contraceptive pills to delay their periods to complete their fast in the month of Ramadan?
I think it's a scientific I would say a concession, or more than that, it's like a benefit which science has provided women, and if there is nothing medically wrong with it, or it does not adversely affect their health, and a doctor also advises that, it can be taken, because deferring one's fast is always difficult, and keeping them later on is not that easy. So if there is a medically possible way in which the periods can be delayed and fasts can be kept, and that medical way is also not detrimental to women's health, then I think it's a big boon which science has provided us, and it can be benefited from.
Thank you. Fatma, you can have your question now.
Assalamu alaikum. Basically, I'm a little confused about Durud Ibrahimi's translation, the one which we read in namaz. So basically, over here, what I've understood is this: that we are praying like for कि ए अल्लाह रहमतें नाजिल फरमा हज़रत मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम और आपकी आल पर, जिस तरह तूने रहमतें नाजिल की इब्राहीम अलैहिस्सलाम और उनकी आल पर। और आगे हम बरकतों की दुआ करते हैं। बट अगर मैं सूरह फातिहा को देखूं तो उसमें तो मगजूब अलैह कहा गया है बनी इसराइल को, तो इधर मुझे समझ आता है कि इधर भी आर प्रेइंग फॉर देम और उधर मगजूब अलैह है वो। मुझे ये कॉन्ट्रडिक्टरी लगता है। मे बी आई अंडरस्टूड इट रॉन्गली, और can you clarify this?
I think there's no contradiction, because the Durood actually mentions the position of Abraham's family, in which, as the progenitor of all prophets, which of the Semitic race, he was the one who was chosen by the Almighty for a particular task, and his whole family was chosen for prophethood. So after Prophet Abraham, you'll find that there was no other prophet who came outside their family, and they were given a certain mission, and that mission was to convey the truth to the rest of mankind. Before Prophet Abraham, messengers and prophets, they came to separate nations in separate areas. As far as Abraham was concerned, he had a very special distinction that after him, prophethood was confined to his descendants, to his progeny, and they were given this responsibility of delivering the truth. Yes, at times they did falter, and at times they did make a mess out of it. So as far as the Maghzub Alayhim verse is concerned, it refers to their wrong attitude, which they adopted. But as far as the position which was given to Abraham and his progeny was something which God gave them. So one thing is God given, and that's a blessing. And another thing is a violation of what God has given them. It's not that in all periods of time that they violated this obligation. There are periods within the Abrahamic era, right up to the last prophet, in which, or you can say the last prophet of the Israelites, which was Jesus, in which the Israelites behaved. But you can say that was far and few between. But other than that, the blessing that the root talks about is the blessing which God conferred. And the ghazab which is talked about by Surah Fatiha is the attitude which they in return adopted.
So if I say that it's referring to a past event, would that be correct? Like,
yes,
their past position?
Absolutely. It is a position which was bestowed on them by the Almighty. They were the witnesses to the truth. They were selected for this purpose. Their whole progeny for 2000 years was given this project that they are like prophets who are going to convey the message of God to the rest of mankind. And at times they did behave the way they ought to have, but at other times they did not. They were not up to the mark. So the blessing that the Almighty gave them was He conferred them. And you know why He conferred them with this blessing? That also the Quran has said, and He said that He made Abraham pass through certain tests. And those tests were the one which He fulfilled. And as a result of that, the Almighty said, Inni ja'iluka linnasi imama. Because of the fact that you have fulfilled a lot of these tests, or all of these tests, I am now going to make you the leader of mankind. And the foremost and the most, I would say the fiercest of those tests was the one in which he was apparently asked to slaughter his son. And he came clean, and he succeeded in that when he followed that the directive. And there were other tests as well, we know, which he had to pass through. So basically, it was a result of that he was conferred with this position. But as I said, that position was not always given its due by his progeny.
Thank you. Rajni, you may have your question now.
Salam.
Actually, sir, my question is, I have two questions. First one is, why do we need to recite Durood or answer of Azan, a prayer of asking peace for Prophet Muhammad, even when Prophet is considered to be the greatest among the prophets? And when Durood was added in Salah?
So let me start with your first question. As far as sending Durood to the Prophet is concerned, it's just a prayer for the Prophet. It's like an expression, it's our expression towards him, of our well-wishing towards him, the way we think that he was the one who brought this guidance. He went through a lot of pain. He had to do a lot of sacrifices personally, as well as in his family, and his companions had to go through a lot to deliver this truth to us. So when we pray for the Prophet, we are actually acknowledging the fact that he was our benefactor. He was the one who provided this guidance by passing through a lot of difficulties. As far as the prayer which is concerned after azan, that is generally translated wrongly. The true translation, if you're referring to the famous prayer, وَبْعَثُوا مَقَامًا مَحْمُودًا, it actually means that give him this life when you raise him up on the day of judgment, such that gratitude and praises are showered upon him by his ummah in acknowledgement of what he has done for the ummah. So this is our prayer for the Prophet. Obviously, he is someone who's already been forgiven, but that doesn't mean that we cannot pray for him, because it is our expression of our attachment towards him. It's more of our attachment that we express. Otherwise, as you've correctly said, that the Prophet himself is someone who's so close to God, and not just the Prophet Muhammad, but all prophets of God, that we can surely be very certain of the fact that all of them will end up in paradise. Did I leave out any question?
Okay, sir, when durud was added in Salah?
Yes, actually, this is an optional part of the Salah, and this is something which we know that the Prophet recommended, and this is right when he was teaching his companions how to pray. But this is one of the areas within the Salah or Namaz which is optional, which is totally left to our discretion. So when we sit in At-Tahiyyat, whether after 2 rakats or after 4 rakats, the utterances that we are going to recite, like for example At-Tahiyyat and then the Durood and then a dua, all of them have been left to our discretion. So you can recite the Durood if you want to, or you can recite other duas or other supplications. So it was yes, that is how it is. It's not an obligatory part or a mandatory part of the Salah.
Sir, actually, I have one more question. Can I?
I may take your question after this lineup is finished. Okay. You may ask after Rafiq Khwaja. Thank you. Adil Qureshi, you may go now.
So I also have a couple of questions. I'll try to ask them one by one if time permits. So, Dr. Even the ayah that we are reading, the ayahs that we read just now, there has been a bit of a redirection starting from ayah 14 and 15. I don't think the ayah 14 and 15 are words of Luqman, right?
Right.
Ayah 14 and 15 are actually the words of Allah Almighty Himself.
Right.
And then after ayah 14 and 15, again, the Luqman's dialogue starts. So I understand you've probably explained this quite multiple times in the past as well. So this is a common linguistic I think that is employed in Quran, where Allah starts talking about somebody, and then he starts talking himself. But why would Luqman was speaking? He was trying to tell his son a few things. Then why was this interjection of between two ayahs, and then again Luqman started speaking?
I think this is very, very apt and very subtle if you just reflect. So you see, Luqman would have said that you thank God and you thank me, had God not interfered or inserted his words. So he didn't, out of humility, Luqman didn't deem it proper that he should directly say that you thank me because I'm your parent. This was given an indirect mention when God actually inserted his words by telling us that thanking your parents after God is equally important. So Luqman could have done it for himself, but the Almighty deemed it better that instead of Luqman asking gratitude for his own self, God interferes or interjects this whole conversation and tells Luqman that, look, after God, it is your parents that you should show gratitude to.
Thank you. Rafiq Khwaja, you may go have your question now.
Shehzad Sahab, I have a number of stocks, and the government cuts 15% on each dividend that I receive throughout the year. So the tax is much more than what my zakat calculate. But do I still need to pay 2.5% on my saving account for the year after this 15% which the government has cut the whole year?
You see, these are two entirely different things. Even if they have imposed a cut on your dividend, if that dividend accumulates at the end of the year and is not used, and you have the zakat date arriving such that the dividend has got accumulated, even part of it, then yes, you will have to pay 2.5% on it as yet, because this is how things work. That if the zakat that you have to give, instead of that, the government has impose a tax on it, which is much more than the zakat, then one thing that you can also do is that the 5% extra which they have imposed, you can use that as tax which has already been paid, or zakat which has already been paid, when you are actually calculating your annual zakat on your wealth.
So जो my 2.5% जो मेरे savings account से मैं calculate करूँगी, उसमें से ये 5% मैं deduct कर सकती हूँ, क्योंकि
Yes, you can.
15% करता है.
Right, you can. Yes, you can. Whatever the 5% amount is, you can deduct that.
So probably I find every year I've paid more in taxes than my total zakat. Much more.
That could be very much possible.
Okay, thank you so much.
Rajni, you can ask your question now.
Again, Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Walaikum assalam.
Sir, what are illin and cisgin? Now, what is the actual meaning of these two terms? Because there is many misconception about illin and cisgin. So please clarify this, sir.
I think the Quran itself has clarified. It says, "Wama adraka ma illiyun kitabum marqum." It is a book of record for the righteous, and Sijjin is a book of record or a register of record for the wrongdoers. So it's Quran itself.
Sir, here in India, many ulama said that, is it true that during the journey of the soul after death, if the disease is a believer or do good deeds, Allah will keep the soul in illin, or vice versa for sijin?
No, there is no such evidence in the Quran. The Quran, it just tells us that Illiyin and Sijjin are two registers, and one of them is the account of the righteous kept, and the other one is the one in which the account of the wrongdoers are kept.
Oh, there is no concept about.
I think what you need to do is just read Surah Mutaffifin, which mentions Illiyin and Sijjin. You'll find that the Quran itself has clarified what Illiyin and Sijjin are.
Thank you. Adil Qureshi, you may have your question now.
So this ayah also refers to the word sahib huma, if I'm not mistaken. Or sahib huma fi dunya marufa. So I think sahib huma means to accompany someone. So does that mean to take care of your parents? Quran is saying that it is a must, that you must live with them or you must accompany them.
Sahib ma fi dunya marufa would mean that you have to behave and respect them in the conventional way regarding which mankind has always been aware of, which means respecting them. So Sahib huma fi dunya, of course, is an expression that just tells us that we have to be respectful and kind and affectionate to them.
But it can be over a phone call or if you're not living with them. The question is,
it's not physical. When it says Sahib huma fi dunya Marufa, it's not referring to your companionship or your physical living with them. That's not the meaning here. The meaning here is that you have to behave with them in a very affectionate way, whether this is in person or in anywhere else. It's not telling you to live with them in the conventional way. The word Sahib huma here does not refer to what you are referring to, or you may be thinking that you have to live with your parents. What it tells us that you have to deal with them in an affectionate way, regardless of whether you are living with them or whether you're not living with them.
Thank you. Dr. Suhail, you can have your question now.
Thank you very much for your excellent talk today. My question is about the Azab-e-Qabr. I am fully aware of the Farahi stance on Azab-e-Qabr, but I was just listening to Sheikh Umar Suleiman the other day, and he is a very well-respected scholar, and I do listen to him because of his immense passion and his intense knowledge. And he obviously must have been from the traditional Islamic school, because he gives a very detailed and vivid description of the Azab-e-Qabr, in a traditional fashion that Farai school doesn't agree with. So my question to you is, obviously, even for I know the evidence-based mechanism by which the Farai school works, we go by on all the riwayats and we chase them right back to see if we can actually establish a connection with the Prophet where they're coming from. So if Farai school doesn't condone this theory, there must be a disruption in this riwayah, and we must have found where they were actually injected or where they were placed in our riwayah, in our religion. So can you give me a little bit of background on the evidence based for where where the concept of azab-e-qabr came into our literature?
I think this concept has come out of hadith literature, and the way hadith literature speaks of it, it at times looks as if it is talking about every single soul who will die as a disbeliever or a sinner, that he would be placed with these, he would be placed in barzakh, and in a way that he would be receiving this punishment. The problem has arisen by not collating and collecting all the hadith literature or all the hadith narratives which belong to this subject. You see, one of the ways to understand hadith on a very important way, that you must collect a hadith or all the hadiths which belong to one topic, so that you can get a big picture or the larger picture, and then you can relate that picture to the Quran. So when you collect all the narratives, there are some narratives which speak of the fact that yes, every single soul will be given this punishment, and vivid details which are very gory, they are presented. But as I said, when you have the complete picture, the thing which emerges is absolutely different. And that is that there are narratives which actually speak of the Prophet and tell a believer that the questioning that they would have in barzakh would be specifically for the people who had denied the Prophet. Thus, for example, one of the questions asked would be, as one of the hadith refers, Man sahibukum, Man sahibukum, who is this person Muhammad with you? Why didn't you believe in him? What made you leave him? So you'll find that the questions which are being asked are specific to the addressees of Prophet Muhammad and who had intentionally denied him. And their account had already been taken in this world. Accountability for them was not to take place on the day of judgment. They had already been held accountable in this world. They had been punished in this world physically, I mean, through either various ways in which we know that the Almighty adopts. And this punishment was to continue in the land of barzakh, and of course in the hereafter. So those hadiths are actually at times left out or not paid attention to, which speak of the fact that this azab is just going to take place for the people who were the foremost adversaries, because they were the ones whose account had already been settled in this world. As for the rest, like many of us, for us, we don't have any, we never were with the Prophet. So the question that what is your companion, why did you leave him, it all becomes irrelevant for us. And it tells us that for us, our accountability is deferred to the hereafter. And it is here when we connect to the Quran, we'll find two things which are very, very appropriate. One of them says that your account will be, your balance will be set up. And the people whose deeds would be tilted in favor of righteousness, they will end up in paradise. Now, for people for whom this has never happened, if this is going to cater for their punishment in the grave or in barzakh, this would be absolutely unfair. So there are two types of people, in short, that we need to understand. There are one type of people about whom this punishment had taken place within their own lifetimes because they had deliberately denied the truth. It would continue in barzakh and in the hereafter. For another type, like people like us, we will be put to sleep and we would be raised up on the day of judgment, and then our account would be settled. The problem which has arisen, which has made this a generalized statement, is that certain narratives which speak of this punishment do not have that question answer configuring in them, which actually is a means of telling us that these narratives are related specifically to the direct addressees of Prophet Muhammad. They are not meant for the rest of mankind, because as I said, the questions which are posed between the angel and the person who dies relate to the Prophet himself. He names them, he asks them, but why did you leave him? What made you leave him? You can read about those questions when you study hadith. So this tells us that what the Quran has already told us, that for people who deny this, their prophets, their messengers in this world, they are held accountable in this world, and their punishment will continue in barzakh. And this punishment which is continuing in barzakh will happen only for those foremost adversaries. It's not meant for later people, because for them, their account is yet to be settled. They will be raised to life. They will they'll have their balance, their scales before them. Their deeds will be weighed in them, and then a proper verdict will be delivered. So the confusion which has arisen is because we have generalized those narratives, because of the fact that there are certain narratives which, as I said, they don't give the full picture. They just start off by the punishment part without introducing the whole narratives as the fact that these narratives actually began with the questioning between the angel and the departed soul regarding the attitude they had adopted with the person, with the prophet himself, as these narratives say.
Yeah, it's sometimes very confusing, because some of our very respected preachers, they come out with some detailed accounts. I mean, and I'm not an expert on all these, but I just get a little bit alerted when people are giving account of any particular narrative, and they go into such amazing fine details. Like if you listen to Maulana Tariq Jameel when he talks about whores, the finity of details, and I just think, who would have had time? Would the Prophet have had time to actually go into such details that the hoods was transparent and their saliva is mixed with water will turn into honey? And the same account was is from Umar Suleiman, the one that I heard the other day. The account of the Azab-e-Qabr was so much detailed that when body would be lowered, you'd be raised up, and then an angel will come, and your namaz will come, and your roza will come, and your zakat will come, and will stop you from all kind of tortures. And such detail, vivid, point by point, that kind of, every time I hear such detailed account, it alerts me a little bit. What is the authenticity of this amazingly detailed account?
So the second point that you have made is also very important, that not only our traditional scholars at times do not relate these narratives with their basis in the Quran, and they treat them independently. The second thing which is often done is that many of these narratives are not very authentic. So the technical word which is Sahih, they are not reported in the Sahih way that we call in Arabic. There's a technical barometer which judges them. So even narratives which are not very authentic, or they are semi-authentic, they are copiously quoted. And this is the second reason that makes this whole thing even more questionable. That on the one hand, they have not been related to their basis in the Quran, and on the second, they are not even reliable themselves.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. It makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Adil Qureshi, you may have your question now.
Would I be able to understand the summary of the discussion that you just had, Dr. Saab? The Azab-e-Qabr was actually meant for the people who underwent the process of Itmam-e Hujjat and Denunat during the period of the Holy Prophet. So it's not meant for the people afterwards, whether they are Muslims or Hindus or whatever. Okay. So there were a couple of other questions that inspired me to think through those as well. I just thought I should quickly check with you. So if a woman who is undergoing her cycles still decides to continue to fast, she does not take any medicine to delay that, but she still decides to continue to fast, will her fast be accepted, or no, she cannot fast during that? That's not acceptable.
That's not acceptable. Because you see, the Prophet through his established Sunnah has informed us that as far as menstrual cycle is concerned, once the lady passes through it, neither her fast nor her prayer is the one that she should continue. Regarding the prayers, this concession has been given that she does not need to make up for the lost prayers. But for the fast, she has to make up for the lost fasts. But this is something which has been explicitly given as a directive in the Sunnah of the Prophet. And so as soon as this happens, so either she can, take some preemptive medicine which does not even let that the cycle happen, or if it starts to happen, then she would have to break her fast.
Okay. And if somebody owns a house, this one is about zakat. If somebody owns a house and now they're receiving rent on that every month, I understand the rental income zakat that has to be paid on that is 10%.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So, and lastly, about Durood, one other question that came to my mind was...
Dil, could we have your questions tomorrow? Because there are other two written questions and we are already over the time. Thank you.
Sure thing.
Okay, Shehzad, I have a written question. Quran gives guidance and rulings about how you must treat your parents, but is there guidance anywhere about treating your parents-in-law?
Well, the Quran does not mention parents-in-law because this is something which is this belongs to the conventions of a society. It is ingrained in our own nature that people who are related to us in this elderly way, they have to be treated with kindness and respect. Needless to say, if they are related to us through marriage, then this respect has to be even more. So there is no explicit directive in the Quran, and we also need to understand that the Quran doesn't give explicit directives regarding so many things which are morally understood by human nature. It is only when there is a chance of any violation or there is a special emphasis that the Quran needs to tell us or lay that emphasis that it speaks of them. Otherwise, such things which are left out, they are left to our own nature and understanding, because human beings, they are unanimous in this, that obviously your parents-in-law, they deserve equal respect.
Thank you. Just a little more question. How about the Hindus who do not have their bodies buried in graves? Where would they get their azab? Should the rule not be equal for all?
So as far as the punishment is concerned, this is not going to take place in the body anyway for even Muslims or for people who are going to deny prophets of God or the disbelievers. So the punishment in the first case was meant for the soul, because as far as the body is concerned, it's just going to disintegrate and it's just going to finish off. And even if the body gets some sort of punishment, like for example, insects eating it, no one will have the sensation, because without the soul being present in the body, anything can happen to the body and the person will not feel anything. It's just an inorganic mask lying there. So we need to understand that even the whole concept of punishment is actually going to take place with the soul for even the people who are the foremost adversaries. So this punishment has nothing to do with the body in the first place. It is something related to the soul, and that soul will actually be given this punishment. And it is also mentioned in the Quran regarding the Pharaoh and his followers, that they would be shown their fate of the hereafter, that this is where you will end up with. They will be shown hell every day and night. This is what the Quran says. And on the day of judgment, they will be made to enter even a more heinous fire or a more heinous punishment. So basically, we need to understand that the punishment which the Quran talks about, and which also the Hadith literature talks about, for people who are the foremost adversaries, for whose account has been taken in this world, it talks about that punishment given to the soul, not to the body. Because as I said, once the soul leaves the body, whatever you could do to the body, it's not going to make that person feel anything.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. That's the end of the questions.
Okay, inshallah, we'll see each other tomorrow.